So today, since today's the last day, because next week is family gathering, we're going to have a meeting. Yay, a budget meeting.
We missed our budget Sunday.
Oh, it's around. And so today we're going to kind of wrap up, and not really wrap up, but more like apply all the different things that we've kind of looked at over the last couple weeks. So we'll actually look at who is my neighbor and hate and wealth and hell, kind of all into one story and in one application, and kind of apply all of this stuff. And this story in Luke 16:19 through 31, the rich man and Lazarus, this is a bizarre story from Jesus. And it's stories like this that kind of force us to wrestle with some of these questions about change and who Jesus calls us to be. So you guys all there? Okay. So verse 19. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. So does the story sound like it's starting off on a good foot? Yeah, no, not really. A rich man. This story is not looking good. Jesus' stories about rich people never go well. Plus, this guy doesn't have a name, so already bad from the get-go. So, and then the other weird thing is this man celebrates every day. That's like, I don't know, a party guy. The Jewish calendar already has 7 feasts on it, but this man seems to party all the time. It's verse 20. At his gate was laid a beggar. So that means probably crippled, unable to move himself, named Lazarus. So this guy has a name. Covered with sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades, where he was in torment. He looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. But Abraham replied, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things while Lazarus received bad things, and now he is comforted here and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from here to us. What a weird story. Before they die, because they both seem to die at the same time, there's 2 places. There's the rich man on earth. He's behind his gate. And then there's Lazarus outside his gate. And then when they die, there's 2 places again. Lazarus goes to Abraham's side, and some translations say Abraham's bosom, which would be like a way of reclining when you eat. So when you were at a big, huge party and you were eating well, you would actually lean on the person next to you. And it was kind of like a big thing where, yeah. So you're dipping with one hand and you're leaning on the other hand. So this guy's saying that his afterlife is that he's actually leaning on Father Abraham in this great banquet in the sky. And so when it says Lazarus wanted to eat on earth, he doesn't get any food, but then when he dies, he gets to eat all he wants in this great feast with Abraham. And then the rich man, he ends up the opposite. He ends up in Hades, in torment, and he seems to be hot and seemingly in fire. And what's even more odd, and this is what we would think would be a kind of a strange thing, is that they're able to talk to each other. Like, if this is hell and heaven, which it doesn't sound like it is, there's this communication going on between the two. Like, you could actually call out and see people. Like, he sees him up there in heaven and says, hey, I'm having trouble down here. So, and Abraham says, no, there's this chasm between the 2 realms to keep people from merging or to keep people from crossing, as if that were a problem. Jesus says in his story, nor can anyone cross from here to us or from us. Why would they want to do that? Why would people from Abraham's side want to cross over? Like, oh, I'd love to, but I can't make it. So this is a really weird story, and probably a very surreal kind of parable. First of all, just asking you, do you think if this is talking about heaven and hell, do you think this is an accurate depiction of what heaven and hell will be like when we die?
Accurate in the sense.
We'll be fulfilled.
still that you're in heaven and in agony? I think, yeah.
It's got the idea of separation.
Right.
There's a separation that will take place, so that's evident there.
I think it's,
Yeah.
But mind, do you picture being able to communicate back and forth or talk to people, or that even Abraham's in charge in heaven and that he dictates what happens? Probably not. So this is some sort of a hyper illustration, probably, to convey a meaning or a point that Jesus is trying to make. He's not actually accurately describing the afterlife. So there's something more going on here that Jesus is trying to communicate with this story. On earth, Lazarus wants what? Food, right. And he's denied it from the rich man. In the afterlife, the rich man wants water, or just even a drop of water from Lazarus, and he's denied it from Abraham. The rich man is now in the same kind of predicament that Lazarus was in. And this kind of has this reminiscent feeling of the story that we did the first week with the guy that said that he's had so much wealth and he built these barns, and he said, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I think I'll just keep it for myself. And this rich man is, in this story, is kind of like that same thing. He's in a gated community. You know, he's behind this gate, and Lazarus is on the outside, and he's not allowed in. So these two aren't sharing with each other. You have a quote there from The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. It's a story about, it has some elements of hell in it, and it's a story of this guy who gets this guided tour of hell. And I just put down what C.S. Lewis depicted as hell would be like. It doesn't really have anything to do with this, but it's just funny. So it says, it seems a deuce of a town, I volunteered. That's how you know it's old, when someone says it's a deuce of a town. And that's what unless you're Stewie Griffin. And that's what I can't understand. The parts of it that I saw were so empty. Was there once a much larger population? So he's talking about seeing hell as it's so empty. Not at all, said my neighbor. The trouble is that they're just so quarrelsome. As soon as anyone arrives, he settles in some street, and before he's been there 24 hours, he just quarrels with his neighbor. Before the week is over, he's quarreled so badly that he decides to move. Very likely he finds the next street empty because all the people there have quarreled with their neighbors that have moved, and if so, he settles in. And if by any chance the street is full, he goes further. But even if he stays, it makes no odds. He's sure to have another quarrel pretty soon, and then he'll move on again. And finally, he'll move right out to the edge of town and build a new house. You see, it's easy here. You only have to think of a house, and there it is. That's how the town keeps growing. Inhabitants live millions of miles from each other and frequently decide to move further still. That's one of the disappointments. I'd thought you'd meet more interesting historical characters, but they're too far away. So he's saying C.S. Lewis's depiction of hell is that no one's around. It's just a big, empty, vast chasm, and you can just keep walking for miles, and then wherever you decide that you've isolated yourself, then you can just build a house there and stay. So even C.S. Lewis's depiction of hell is this isolated, so cloistered kind of thing, which, if you think about it, the rich man on earth and the rich man in hell, almost the same. You know, he's behind his fence, isolating himself from all those wretched poor. And then in hell, God kind of says, all right, then you're isolated again. You can just be by yourself if that's what you like. Have you ever driven by like gated communities in the rich areas? Have you seen those people build these mansions and then they're behind gates? And then even still, like if you were actually to walk up to their gate, their house is still like way back there. You know, it's not just separated by a gate, it's separated by like all their lawn and their driveway too. And then you have to push the intercom and go like, yeah, I'm outside and I want to come inside. And they're like, who are you? Delivery man. Yes. So the rich man has a gate. Gates keep people out, and they keep people in too. The rich man has wealth, and he can afford to live in his gated community, and he's happy. But he wants this disconnection from people, like Lazarus. And when he dies, God says, all right, you can have what you want. So like the man who built the barns, his wealth isolates him, and he's alone. Wealth can give us whatever we want. You know, it can give us options, necessities, but it can make us isolated and cut off. And we read, in week 4, we read that parable Jesus told of the rich fool who built barns for himself to hold his grain. And we said there's an example of someone who cuts himself off from the community. He has no idea what they need. So when the grain comes, he just says, well, what am I going to do with this? Because he has no idea what's happening outside his wall. And if he did, maybe he would have helped those people. Did Lazarus need the rich man on earth.
Well, he could have used some assistance.
Right. So when they were both alive, did Lazarus need his help? Yeah. Did the rich man need Lazarus on earth?
No.
He didn't think so.
For friendship, maybe, but not for material.
Right, not for anything material. Lazarus needed the rich man for food and assistance, like Doug said. But Jesus says that the rich man in hell needs Lazarus just as much. The rich man needs people like Lazarus so that he could take his blessing and share it with others. He can't share his blessing with others if he just hoards it. So in effect, even on earth while they were alive, they still needed each other. But so here's where'd I go? Oh yeah, the rich man says, "Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue because I am in agony in this fire." So now he's flipped it and he says, now I need help. Send Lazarus to help me. But here's the second request the rich man makes in verse 27. He says, he answered, "Then I beg you," so after he says, "No, you can't have any water," he says, "Then I beg you, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers, and let him warn them, so that they will not come here also to this place of torment." And Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." So Abraham says, why would I do that? They have the Bible. They have the Old Testament. They have the prophets. They have enough information. They know what to do. They know where they need to go. Verse 30. "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." So this rich man has the audacity to argue with Father Abraham. This is Father Abraham we're talking about. This is bigger than Moses, bigger than everybody. Grandfather of the entire Jewish nation. And this guy is arguing with him in hell. He's in hell, and he thinks that he's got a leg to stand on, that he can argue with Father Abraham. Verse 31, he said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets," so in other words, Abraham says, dude, if they don't read their Bible, they will not even be convinced if someone rises from the dead. End of discussion. Chapter closed. And does Jesus break it all down for us afterwards, and he explains the parable? He says, all right, here's what's going on. No, the story just sits there. That's it. That's the end. So, and if we were watching this unfold, like on a movie screen, or we were watching this as a TV episode, yeah, exactly. We'd be like, huh? Is that over? Is that the end? Did the film just get cut?
What happened to Neo?
Yeah, exactly. And we'd be rolling, and we'd storm out and demand our money back. And what's the story all about? Is Jesus talking to us about wealth? Is he talking to us about racism? Is he talking to us about classism? Jesus says if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. So first, let's go back to the image of this great chasm between Abraham's side and Hades. What is that? What would this great chasm be? When you picture the story unfolding in your head, what do you see?
A canyon.
Okay.
But they're talking, so it's not a huge canyon, like Grand Canyon. It's a smaller canyon.
Like a cliff.
Yeah, but it's short because they're talking over it.
Okay. Anything else? What do you picture this great chasm to look like?
I would just think it's just empty.
Like space? Like blackness? The rich man says, "Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue because I am in agony in this fire." So the nature of his request is that he wants Lazarus to get him water.
Is that like a servant? Like he still looks at Lazarus as he doesn't say, "Abraham,
Yeah,
bring the water."
right.
Have that poor guy there.
Exactly.
So he's
Yeah.
still thinking of him.
He's still rich in hell. He still has this expectation of first-class service, right? He's like, servant boy in heaven, bring me some water. Right, exactly. He still expects service, even in hell. This rich man doesn't get the point. He doesn't understand where he is. You're on a desert island.
Yeah, I'll be right with you.
Yeah, he's Mr. Howell. He still thinks that he's rich, even on an island where there's no money anywhere, He still thinks that he can get his way. So then he asks, in verse 27, Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family. So he still sees Lazarus as some sort of servant, right? He's still making these requests. The rich man does not get it at this point. So where is the vast chasm that Jesus is talking about? Metaphorically, symbolically.
Between heaven and hell.
Then the rich man says, "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." Should any good Jew be arguing with Abraham? People listening to the story would be like, have their mouths open. They'd be like, I can't believe this guy has the rocks to argue. They'd be like, I can't believe this guy. Who does he think he is? He has a song named after him. Father Abraham has 7 sons. The rich man still thinks he's a winner. He still thinks he's rich. He keeps coming up with these requests, and Abraham keeps knocking him back. And he says, this is not how it works. The rich man is arrogant, and he's cocky, and he just won't let go of how he used to be, you know? Jesus says, if they don't listen to the Moses, and they don't listen to the prophets, they will not be convinced even if someone rises from the dead. The chasm that this rich man can't get past is almost like himself. You know, it's his heart. His heart is still separated from where Christ wants it. The rich man still thinks that he has special standing. He still thinks, yeah, exactly. And he still thinks he has privilege. He still thinks that he's wealthy and that other people should serve him, and God couldn't care less what this guy thinks. Abraham's like, you know what? I don't care what you say. It doesn't matter. So maybe since there's nothing after this story, maybe there's something before the story. So if you look at Luke 13:22, which talks about the narrow door. You all find it? Then Jesus went through the towns and villages, teaching as he made his way to Jerusalem. And someone asked him, Lord, are only a few people going to be saved? Now, remember the Good Samaritan story we read? Same kind of situation. Someone's asking him a question, and it's almost the same kind of question, but just phrased a little differently. And remember what we were saying back then, that the Jews, they believe they're the ones that are in. Right. Jews are in, Gentiles out, everyone else out on the outside. And so there's these sides. There's believers and unbelievers. There's saved and unsaved. There's chosen, not chosen, us, them, right? So Jesus says to them, verse 24, make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, you will stand outside knocking and pleading, Sir, open the door for us. But he will answer, I don't know you or where you came from. So who is Jesus saying will actually be locked out?
Those that God doesn't know.
The Jews.
Yeah, the people he's talking to. The Jews. He's talking to the Jews. And he says, no, you will be the one saying, let me in. Verse 26, then you will say, we ate and drank with you, and you taught in our streets. But he will reply, I don't know you or where you come from. Away from me, all you evildoers. There will be weeping there and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, but you yourselves thrown out. People will come from east and west and north and south, and will take their place at the feast in the kingdom of God. Indeed, there are those who are last will be first, and the first will be last. And I think we sometimes read this passage, and we think in our heads Christians and non-Christians. But Jesus is talking to the saved, pretty much. He's talking to the people that already thought they were God's chosen people. And he's saying, no, you're going to be outside the gate. You're going to be begging to come in, and I'm going to say, I don't know who you are. Jesus says in the afterlife, people will be there from all over, people who you think should be outside the gate. And he goes through west, north, and south, right? And Doug said, yeah, the Gentiles, that's what they would hate to think, that, oh, the Gentiles are going to be at Abraham's side, and I'm going to be outside going, let me in. What a terrible, terrible thing for Jesus to say to a group of Jews, right? I mean, that would just make you hate him. Either that would make you go, this guy's a false prophet. I don't want to listen to this guy anymore. He's lost his mind. Or you'd be like, I need to get my act together. Like, you're going to be one of those two, and like, I need to listen to what this guy has to say. Just the things, when you read them and you're like, Jesus was really kind of direct. You know, he wasn't kind of like, oh, everything's going to be. And people that don't read the Bible think that Jesus had a message of love and forgiveness, and he was friendly, and he picked up bunny rabbits and children and walked around. And yeah, exactly. I'm like, they don't think of the Jesus that, you know, stormed into churches and flipped tables and told the priests that they were going to hell. That's totally different.
When he says make every effort to enter, he's telling them to make an effort to enter the narrow door.
Right.
Because, is he telling them how or what?
I don't think he's telling them how, but he's saying, no.
Just go ahead and try, but you're not going to be able to.
Yeah. I think he's just saying, this is like prophets would say, like in the Old Testament. You know, the prophets would say, you know, the enemy's coming, we need to get our act together. Or God's wrath is coming, we need to get our act together. Jesus is kind of a prophet in this sense, saying, you know what? You're not where you think you are.
It's like you're just comfortable and you're not working it or whatever.
Right.
You know, and just like it just reminds me of like Left Behind when that pastor. And the
Oh, right.
You know, he was left behind. He's a pastor.
Right.
So it's like it makes you think, you know, and it's like.
You're just going through the motions, but you don't know me personally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that's scary sometimes.
Mm-hmm. In Luke 15, there's all these parables of things that are lost, right? There's the lost coin, lost sheep, lost son, all that stuff. And if you look at the beginning of verse 1, it says, now the tax collectors and sinners, so immediately we think outcasts, these are not the in crowd, were all gathered around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the people who think they're in, muttered to themselves, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So Jesus dines with those who are supposedly on the outside of the gate. Jesus has his own set of categories, and he hangs around dirty, disgusting people, and he eats with them, meaning he welcomes them, he embraces them, and accepts them. So then he starts telling these parables because the Pharisees are muttering about his relationship with sinners. Verse 3, Jesus says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep, and he loses one of them. And then in verse 8 he says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. And then he says in verse 24, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is now found. Jesus tells stories about lost people and lost things, and he's telling them to religious people who think they are found, who think they're chosen, right? People who think they're saved, people who think they're in. Jesus is kind of talking about this whole different order of things. He's saying, you know, God's love is for those who understand that they don't deserve it. God's forgiveness is for people on the outside of the gate who are trying to come in, and I'm going to let them in. And those of you who think, oh, I've got it made and everything's fine and dandy, and I'm in, you know, my name's on the list. Jesus says, no. I'm going to say that I don't even know who you are. Jesus is the rich man in the story, in the Lazarus story, you know, he's still clinging to his old life, and he still feels like, I deserve stuff. I still feel people should still be serving me. People should still be bringing me stuff, right? And he's dead. He's dead. And the Pharisees, if you think about it, they think they're probably even better than this rich man, really, because they're chosen. They're Jews. They're elected. They're predestined. They've read the Torah a million times, so they're a notch or two above everybody else, you know, and probably the people believe it, you know. And Jesus tells the children of Israel, he says, you know, I want you to be better than the Pharisees. And they're like, how could we do that? How can we be better than the Pharisees? They're perfect. And he's like, no, I want you to be better than they are. So they already think they're saved, you know. They think that they're behind the law. They think they're behind the gate. But Jesus is saying in this parable, you know what? I don't love you for who you are. or what you've done or what you've acquired or how many times you've read the Bible or how wealthy you are. That's not how, or how many, you've memorized your Bible a million times, or I tithe, 50% of my income. Jesus didn't come, like in these lost passages, Jesus didn't come to save anyone that was already found. You need to admit, I'm lost. I need to be found. Jesus didn't come to raise the living either. There's no living people Jesus raised. He raised people who were dead, people who could not save themselves. And the rich man, even though he's dead, the irony is, I think if you were some sort of an English lit major, you would think that this man who is dead refuses to die. All the things that he believes and that he's had that were real things, real philosophies, real theologies in his life, he now said, I can't let those things go. Those things still apply even though I'm dead and in hell. He's still better than Lazarus. He's still stronger than Lazarus. He's still richer than Lazarus. He still deserves privilege more than Lazarus. And he will never understand that God doesn't love you for any of those things. Right? Jesus says, nobody comes to the Father except through me. Right? There's nothing else. There's no wealth. There's no, lavish Bible reading that you can do. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. You're the lost sheep. You are the lost coin. You are the lost son. You are the thing that is just sitting there waiting for God to pick you up and rescue you and save you. And there's nothing you can do to save yourself. A dead person cannot rise himself from the dead. How will you ever understand the love that God has if you are still trying to impress everyone else, or to earn everyone else's approval? Or if you're the busy one that's condemning others to hell, and for just a God that you've never really come face to face with, you've never really met. How are you going to die if you think you have to win everything? Because if you have to win everything, that means someone has to lose. I'm winning, that person's losing. Jesus wants to save Christians from trying to win on their own merit, from saying, oh, I can do this. I can save myself. I can be the best Christian. I'm a good Christian, but I'm going to be even better. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to be a better Christian. I'm going to earn my way into God's heart. Or he's going to really love me more because I'm going to do all this extra stuff. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be a missionary. Right? Jesus says in Luke 9:24, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will save it. It's like, again, anything you'd think would be the normal way, Jesus is like, no, I'm the opposite way. I'm the third way. I'm the thing that you're not even thinking about.